Now we are sewing very slowly. Step by step we are going through a sewing cycle. You got 2 layers of vinyl here, and we start when the needle hits the fabric downwards. At this position we got 39 degrees on the main shaft. I got a scale there that I'll reference. This check spring here is actually somewhat loaded. It's not in the resting position at this point. Some would say it should be that, but I don't think that's right. Doesn't matter that there is some tension there. It is, however, important that the check spring is engaged here. If there is some slack in the thread, the needle can hit its own thread, and that would be bad. And now we move forward, and you will see that the check spring there goes down. I'll stop here. You can see it's not in the resting position yet, and the needle goes down through the fabric, and the take up lever goes down. And it's almost in the stop position now. And it's still not in stop position, I think. No, it isn't. Now it's almost in the complete down with the needle bar. It's now 105 degrees, still going down, and now it's in resting position, and this thread has got slack now. And now it's about still going down. Now it's close to the lowest point of the needle bar. When needle is at lowest point, it is important that the check spring is at resting position and the thread has got slack, because otherwise you can risk that you get skipped stitches, because the loop will not be made below the fabric. This diagram shows how different parts move in this sewing machine. And we just had the needle bar, or the needle, at the lowest position, and the needle is the red line here that came here from 40 degrees and was descending. It was close to 0 above the needle plate, and it has descended to a minimum here, and we are at 129 degrees here. This is the scale and angle of the main shaft we got down here. We got some other curves here. The green one here is the take up lever position, and it is multiplied by a factor 2 because the influence on the thread is the double, because if it goes up 1 millimeter, it will take with it 2 millimeters of thread. Then we got 2 curves here for the feet. The orange is the up-down position of the feet times 10, so it's easier to see. And here from 40 degrees it was just above the needle plate, and then it has moved below the needle plate here. The blue line is the forward-backwards motion of the feet. It is actually in delt position and is moving back here now. This is also a way to show what is going on. But we are now here at 129 degrees and will continue what the machine looks like. We go forward, and the needle bar goes up again, and in a short time you will have the hook that catches the thread. You see there's plenty of slack here, and you might see that the hook is coming forward there and with the thread. Now I feel a little resistance to moving because the needle eye is about in the center of the fabric, and it makes it harder for the hook to pull the thread down. Now the needle eye got up there, and the thread is advancing around the bobbin case. We still got plenty of slack here on the needle thread. Now we are almost around, but here now we are about halfway around, and the thread is catching a little bit on this corner there. I don't know whether it's good or bad, but it do that, and there it flips by there. You have actually got a little tension here of the thread when we have got halfway around, where most of the thread is used here in the bobbin area in order to pull the thread around. We got a little movement of the check spring there. The take-up lever has actually started to go up. Maybe I should just go a little back here. It's about here that we got the take-up lever full down. So at this position we have the lowest point of the take-up lever here. The feed dogs are on their way up. Stroke of the feed is to the back position, and the needle is on its way up. And then we go a little further here, and the check spring started to move there, and we got max of thread used here, and the take-up lever actually do go up here, and therefore the check spring is moving a bit up, and now the thread loosens here and is by, and the thread is pulled up by the take-up lever. Now we enter an interesting part of the sewing cycle, and therefore I've added 2 video clips that is close up of what is happening at the tensioner and of the presser foot. So it is synchronized with the rest of the video here. And we continue. And it takes some thread tension to pull up the thread. You can see the check spring is actually activated here. And it is because there is some friction here in the fabric, and the needle eye will also give some friction. It moves the check spring. You can see the check spring is moving more and more up, but it is not a full tension yet. And now it moves almost full up now. Now we enter the interesting part of the sewing cycle, where the stitch is formed. And it is in this area, and we will zoom into that now. In this zoom diagram we got the needle coming down here. We got the feed moving forward here. We got the take-up lever, the green line here. And this violet line here is actually take-up lever plus this feed, because they are in combination to pull the thread. So this is the sum of these two. We are just above 330 degrees now. Thread is passing at the pressure foot upwards. In a short time we have the take-up lever so high that the thread tension will start to pass on the tensioner. The thread tension there, when it passes, will of course be what had been set on the tensioner. We will go a little further here and go back to this diagram. The take-up lever still goes up and the tension is increased. What is important to notice here is that the thread do not pass anymore at the pressure foot. It is like stuck here, and it is because there is some friction on the pressure foot and a couple of thread guides. So therefore there is some resistance for the thread to pass there. So it's stuck. That means that when the take-up lever goes further up, it needs to take the thread through the tensioner. The other thing is that the feed is moved forward, so these about 1.5 millimeters we got here is actually pulled in the stitch. It's the only place the thread can go. So it is actually the feed that is forming the stitch in this part. And it can be quite good because it is a limited motion, and you got also higher thread tension because you got this friction that will prevent thread to go further. At about this position where the take-up lever is at max, we will see that the thread starts to pass again under the foot. There's reason to believe that when that happens, then the stitch can't be pulled anymore. The tension needed to pull even more is not there. So therefore the thread is again taken from the machine and it's not pulled further in the stitch. When we go a little further, we can notice that the check spring starts to loosen a little bit, and then we are sure that we have finished the stitch forming. Then we have the take-up lever goes a bit back. So even though that the feed goes forward, it will let the thread pass under it. It's also important to notice the height of needle here. If you got the needle hitting a thicker fabric here, you still got some movement of the feed. I would say if you hit it here, where the needle point is about 6 millimeter above, we got the feed about 1 millimeter above, so that means that if we got 5 millimeters of fabric, we actually have some movement of the feed when the needle goes down through the fabric. So we can risk that the needle will hit the needle place because of the bending of the needle here. This should not happen. If this could be a problem, you need to advance the timing of the feed. If you do that, you will not have any movement when the needle hits the fabric. When you advance feed, you move this blue curve upwards, and then you interfere with this stitch forming process. And it is my experience it becomes much harder to make a balanced stitch in thinner fabrics. You get sometimes the stitch below and sometimes the lock is above at the surface, and you can't keep it inside. If you got thick fabrics, then there is no problem in placing the lock of the stitch inside the fabric. With the thick fabric you can advance the feed. With the thin fabrics you need the delayed feed that you normally have of the sewing machines. I made another video about this pressure foot here. it has got a notch to the back. The other video explains how this can be useful. It works in the same way as a large wheel pressure foot like this one. The thing about it is that the foot do not have the edge as you see here for the normal foot, and therefore the stitch forming process with the feet involved do not work with this kind of foot here or this kind of foot. So therefore you shouldn't use them for thinner fabrics. There you need this edge and the stitch forming process with the feet. But with thicker fabrics it can be okay to use this foot or this foot, because then it is easy to make a balanced stitch. And the needle has started to descend. And now we are close to the take-up lever is at max. The fabric is still moved. The take-up lever is coming down, and I can see the check spring has loosened here the thread. So now the stitch forming has finished because you got not that much. I can feel there is quite much tension still. Now not so much tension, so I think the stitch is locked, and now we are close to finishing, and you can see that check spring is coming down now. The needle is near to hit again, and I need to put on here some light to see when the needle hits. It's about there. That was a recording of one stitch of the Singer 201.